What happens when a smaller nation dares to stare down a superpower? When a prime minister doesn't just push back but flips the entire script? Today, we're witnessing something rare, a country saying no to the US, and not out of fear, but with a strategy. Canada, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, is rewriting the rules, and it's sending shockwaves through Washington. Trump is furious, the US is rattled, and the world is watching closely as a new era of global resistance takes shape, bold, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss updates on the biggest geopolitical shifts and economic showdowns happening right now. Carney draws a line in the snow. In a move that shocked insiders and infuriated Washington, Prime Minister Mark Carney made it clear, no deal is better than a bad deal. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was the core of Canada's new trade doctrine. At the center of the storm is a 35% US tariff aimed at Canadian steel, lumber, and auto parts, a $35 billion threat dangling over Canada's economy. Instead of blinking, Carney drew a line. At a summit in quiet Huntsville, Ontario, he rallied provincial leaders and business elites to brace for impact rather than compromise national dignity. The question is no longer what Trump will do, but how far Carney is willing to go to walk away. This isn't just about a single negotiation. It signals a dramatic shift in how Canada sees itself on the world stage. For decades, trade with the United States was seen as essential. Now, it's viewed as negotiable. The real stakes, power, pride, and 2.3 million jobs. This isn't just about trade policy. It's about sovereignty. It's about whether a smaller nation can refuse to kneel before economic blackmail. Over 2.3 million Canadian jobs depend on trade with the US, $14 billion in steel, $23 billion in autos, and $6 billion in lumber. Carney's response? We will not accept a bad deal, not even if it costs billions. That's not political posturing. That's strategy. With the US playing hardball, Carney played chess. He met with provincial leaders like Doug Ford and Danielle Smith and laid out the numbers. He made it personal, not just political. Your provinces depend on this. So do our families, he told them. And if we cave now, we don't just lose money, we lose credibility, leverage, and the ability to ever say no again. That message hit home. It wasn't just economics. It was national identity, and Carney knew exactly how to weaponize it. Trump's tantrum meets Carney's cool. Trump's 35% tariff threat wasn't just aggressive, it was a pressure tactic straight out of his 2016 playbook. But this time, Carney refused to fold. The former governor of the Bank of England used discipline, not drama. While Trump hurled threats, Carney calmly built a firewall. The tariffs didn't just target Canada's economy. They aimed to force Canada to submit. The message from Trump was simple: play by our rules or pay the price. But Carney had another message: Canada won't play your game. And that firewall has a name, Bill C-5. The bill fast-tracks countermeasures, reroutes trade flows, and empowers Canadian exporters to pivot away from US markets. It also unlocks emergency subsidies for industries hit hardest by tariffs. Carney didn't shout back, he responded with precision. His cool under pressure is redefining leadership in a high-stakes global showdown. It's not just a rebuttal, it's a blueprint for how middle powers can stand tall without folding under superpower pressure. Enter Bill C-5, the One Canadian Economy Act. Passed on June 26, 2025, Bill C-5 is more than legislation, it's a national pivot. The law tears down internal trade barriers, accelerates megaprojects like pipelines and ports, and builds a Canadian-first economy that no longer depends on US access. It fast-tracks infrastructure approvals, aligns provincial standards, and streamlines labor mobility. And it's already in motion, with memoranda signed by premiers like Doug Ford and Danielle Smith to build pipelines with Ontario steel and rail lines for critical minerals. This isn't a retreat. It's a redirect. And it's designed to do more than just survive US pressure, it's meant to reinvent Canada from within. For years, provinces have fought each other over regulations, building codes, and red tape. Bill C-5 ends that. A mine approved in Alberta can now be fast-tracked in Quebec. A port project stalled in Nova Scotia can be greenlit with national urgency. Global interest surges as US clout shrinks. Ironically, Trump's threat became Canada's advertisement. Over 80 countries have reached out to Ottawa for trade talks since the tariff showdown. Carney's vision: a diversified trade web stretching across Europe, Asia, and Africa. According to projections, dismantling interprovincial trade barriers could add 200 billion Canadian dollars to Canada's GDP. The world wants what Carney is selling: stability. From the European Union to Japan, countries are lining up to talk with Canada. And why not? In a world increasingly defined by instability, Canada's new posture looks attractive. Resilient, predictable, and open to new partnerships. The Wall Street Journal called it a strategic decoupling from U.S. dominance. Not chaotic, not retaliatory, but planned and precise. Even former U.S. allies are beginning to see Canada as a stable hedge, a calm port in a turbulent global economy. The risks are real, but so is the resolve. The Canadian Parliamentary Budget Office estimates that a full trade war could cost Canada over 180,000 jobs. But the alternative, Carney argues, is worse: surrendering sovereignty for short-term stability. South of the border, the picture isn't any brighter. Tariff-driven inflation could cost the average U.S. household $2,700 a year. And job losses could hit over 500,000, according to Yale's Budget Lab. This isn't just a bilateral feud. It's a global rebalancing act. And yes, there are critics. Some First Nations leaders have walked out of consultations, accusing Carney of rushing through legislation without genuine dialogue. Lawsuits are brewing. The backlash is real. But Carney isn't backing down. The future demands action, he says. Fast, unified, unapologetic. 3 possible outcomes, and 1 message. Scenario 1, no deal, full tariffs. The U.S. moves forward with tariffs. Canada retaliates. The trade war begins in earnest. But with Bill C-5 already laying down new supply chains, Canada doesn't just survive, it adapts. Supply chains adjust. Buy Canadian becomes policy, not just patriotism. New markets in Asia and Europe open up as Canadian firms rush to decouple from U.S. dependencies. Provinces start investing in domestic production hubs, turning crisis into opportunity. Scenario 2, temporary truce. International pressure forces Trump to delay or scale back. Negotiations drag on, uncertainty remains, but Canada continues to diversify. The longer the U.S. wavers, the stronger Canada's alternative paths become. Businesses hedge bets, governments invest in cross-border infrastructure with Europe and Asia, and Canadian consumers grow more cautious of U.S. imports. The pause becomes strategic breathing room, time Canada uses wisely to reshape its economic future. Scenario 3, Canada signs a deal. Canada gives in to avoid economic pain. Tariffs vanish, but so does leverage. A win for Washington, but a loss for long-term independence. It would also fracture the political unity Carney has built across provinces. Critics would call it capitulation, and public trust could erode. Industries that began pivoting away from U.S. reliance might halt progress, leaving Canada vulnerable to future trade threats from Washington. Through all of it, Carney's position is unwavering: we don't chase deadlines. We chase dignity. Carney's closing move, rewriting the rules. While Trump measured diplomacy in ultimatums, Carney built alliances and laid concrete. He turned threats into reforms, fear into momentum. Bill C-5 is a signal: Canada is no longer playing by old rules. And though critics, including some Indigenous leaders, argue that Carney moved too fast, the PM stands firm. The future demands action. Fast. Unified. Unapologetic. This isn't just policy. It's identity. It's about who leads when others posture. It's about what a nation chooses when threatened: submission or reinvention. Carney didn't just say, no deal is better than a bad deal. He meant it. And with each step, he's crafting a blueprint not just for resistance, but for renewal, a model for sovereignty in a fractured global order. Final thoughts: what's the price of dignity? Trump threw a fit. Carney stood tall. And in between, we saw what leadership under pressure looks like. Not just loud words, but bold action. Now the world is asking, what's the price of dignity? Is sovereignty worth more than short-term comfort? Should Canada hold its ground or make peace to protect jobs? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more real talk on global power shifts, economic warfare, and the leaders shaping tomorrow's world, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because this story is far from over.